we're going to go ahead and get started. I know that there was a slight mix-up on the on what was the invite versus what was the public notice. However, I want to respect everyone's time, and we do have a quorum, so I want to go ahead and get started if we could, okay? The purpose for today's meeting is to hear ordinance number 297-2023 as amended by council members Griffin and Santana, an emergency ordinance to supplement the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976 by enacting new chapter 191A, sections 191A.01 through 191A.07 related to community benefits agreements. Before I turn it over to my colleague Anthony Hairston for remarks, I do want to make all of my colleagues aware that with all of us at the table, we do have a quorum. We are going to try to make sure that we keep a quorum as much as possible, which is 5 members, and we can make sure that we hear this piece of legislation and get it out of this committee. Once again, just to give everybody process, this has been a more than 6-month process. We pretty much started in December or so, November or December of last year. We've had several working group sessions. We started out with a working group that included the corporate sector, labor leaders, as well as other MBE and FBE contractors. Many of the council members, as well as the administration, participated in these discussions. So there's been a lot of give and take over the last 6 to 8 months. And now what we're in the process of doing is having hearings where any recommendations to make the ordinance better can be made. And then once the recommendations for the ordinance are made, then we will schedule a finance committee hearing either in Monday the 15th or Monday the 22nd, okay? So that everybody understands the process on our side of the table. Anybody who has recommendations on amendments, please send them to Jennifer Heinert O'Leary, who is right in front of me, as well as Jessica Columbi. They will be putting together a briefing document so that we can deliberate on these requests that other partners in the community and the administration are giving, and determine whether or not we're going to make amendments. I do want to make it clear that this meeting is going to be turned over to the Chairman Hairston and the Vice Chair of Workforce Development, Stephanie House. But I did want to at least give kind of the process and what we're doing in this process. This morning, we did hear from developers. This afternoon, we've been trying to hear from some of the MBE, FBE contractors, as well as some of the labor leaders who have given input on this as well, okay? So, that being said, I'm gonna turn it over to my chairs, Hairston and House, for initial comments, and then we'll turn it over to Jennifer O'Leary, and then from there on, Councilman Anthony Hairston and Councilwoman Stephanie House will conduct the rest of the meeting.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President, for your opening remarks. And again, thank you to all who has come to provide remarks here today on our initial CBO that has been introduced here at Cleveland City Council. You know, just let me say that, you know, as the President indicated, you know, there's been a lot of discussions around this topic here, a lot of discussions that, you know, we've been having over the years, but most of them have been, you know, voluntarily, right? You know, people have been volunteering to having these conversations. You know, it has not been codified, and so that's where we are with this point today, is to codify a lot of discussions and the voluntary actions that many have been just, you know, playing here in our community by having DEI be at the forefront of a lot of the work that they are doing. You know, a lot of voices went into crafting the document that was ultimately introduced. This body, along with council staff and administration, reached far and wide to solicit input from so many, from your small business owners to your mid-sized business owners to your large-scale developers across the city. We even went as far as talking with professional teams across the city, chambers across the city, and anyone else who was open and willing to have a conversation. Our building trades were also part of the discussion as well. All together provided valuable and very thoughtful input in the responses that they provided, again, that ultimately led to what was introduced. This body also made it a point to solicit input from the residents of the neighborhoods as well. The newsletter we sent out citywide included survey links, it included ways to participate through a dedicated phone line. So this body also made sure that we heard from the people who are living in these communities as well. And further down the agenda, we will hear from Cleveland City Council policy staff, who will talk through some of the community survey responses that we did receive through that process as well. So again, just thank you all for being here. We are going to move through the agenda. Just as a reminder, each person who is presenting remarks has 3 minutes to share with us here this morning, and we'll move on to the next person on the agenda. All right? And also, all questions and responses go through the chair, just as a matter of, keeping order here as we have this discussion today. Thank you. Councilwoman.
Thank you so much. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. We are really looking forward to having, continuing on to have a substantive conversation as we talk about ordinance number 297, 2023, our community benefits ordinance, understanding we have come to this place knowing that we just have not necessarily fully met the mark of what we see and what we desire here in the city of Cleveland, and ensuring that as we are making significant investments in our built environment, that same benefit can go into the lived lives and experiences of Clevelanders and those, who are invested in the city of Cleveland. And so as we go through this process, we really are looking forward of having to listening to seeing how we can make this ordinance really come to fruition. And at the end of the day, from the work that we do together, we want it to be felt by Clevelanders, right? We don't want to be in this place 5-10 years from now where the frustrations that we all hear, right? We see it, right? We want to have a different narrative when it comes to development in the city of Cleveland. Regardless, all the writing is what people can feel, see, and touch. And so we are prayerful from the work that we will do collectively. We will definitely put Cleveland on just at a stronger, better place to ensuring that this place that we all call home truly is a place where people can grow old and where our young people want to stay and where our young people absolutely want to retire with dignity. So thank you all so much for your time, and we look forward to having a substantive conversation this afternoon. Thanks, Chair.
All right. Thank you, Councilwoman House. All right, next we'll move on. We have Jennifer O'Leary, Special Counsel in the Cleveland City Council, who will provide an overview of the legislation. Thank you. Jennifer.
Thank you. Through the chairs, to the council members and our guests, the City of Cleveland has been using community benefit agreements for development projects for over a decade. This ordinance requires a community benefits agreement for development projects that receive city financial assistance of $250,000 or more. It sets the legal framework for how community benefit agreements are developed, how benefits are determined, and the kinds of benefits the city wants developers to prioritize. Council adopted resolution number 954 in September of 2022 to establish a working committee with the administration and community stakeholders. This was to ensure that developers seeking city financial assistance for development projects provide maximum tangible benefits to Cleveland neighborhoods and residents. Why was this work so important to begin? First, to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion principles, this committee has been working to improve compliance with and reporting of Office of Equal Employment Opportunity, MBE, FBE, and CSB contracting and resident employment goals. The Office of Equal Employment, in their 2021 annual report, reported that only 6.5 of the city's prime contracts were awarded to MBEs. Only 21% were awarded to female business enterprises. We all know that this is not enough and we can do better. Another goal of this ordinance is to provide more meaningful opportunities for minority business enterprises female business enterprises, and Cleveland area small businesses to scale their businesses and grow the local resident workforce. In doing so, we aim to balance the need for predictability and flexibility for development projects. Also, this process will front-load community input and developers' commitments to community benefits prior to legislation coming before City Council for approval. So what does this ordinance do? First, it defines what city financial incentives require a community benefits agreement. It also describes what a community benefits agreement is and defines what community benefits are included in those agreements and which developers and development projects will be subject to the ordinance. Second, it establishes 2 tiers based on the amount of city financial assistance involved and the size of the project. The first tier are development projects that receive at least $250,000 in city financial assistance, and these will require a baseline community benefits agreement. The baseline agreement will require a plan to meet MBFB CSB goals, as well as resident and low-income employment goals, participation in mentor-protege programs, apprenticeships and internship opportunities, and community meetings in order to gain community input on the development project itself. And these are all contained in .02 of the ordinance. The second tier is for larger development projects with over $20 million in project costs. Developers will also have to provide additional benefits working from the menu of benefits listed in .03 of the ordinance. What is determined to be enough is determined by the department directors in consultation with developers by using a scorecard evaluation process. Cleveland Citywide Development Corporation will also review community benefit commitments and advise the departments and council based on the community and departmental input that they receive. Another important aspect of this ordinance is improving workforce and community benefit data reporting and transparency by directing the Office of Equal Employment Opportunity to develop a public-facing data dashboard. OEO will also send quarterly reports to council and copies of community benefit agreements to include in the legislative file so that all council members will be able to, and the public will be able to see them. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Attorney O'Leary, for the detailed overview of the ordinance that was introduced. Thank you. Next, we're going to bring up policy and research staff, Brooke Sabin, Jessica Columbi, to go through a brief slide to share some of the feedback that we received through the survey that was sent out, and that was sent out to residents of the city of Cleveland. Brooke, Jessica.
Chairman Hairston, Chairwoman House, thank you so much for having us this afternoon. We are going to give a short presentation on our survey that went out to members of the community. As we have outlined here, an internal working group started meeting this past summer. We've actually been meeting every 2 weeks and have been doing really tremendous amount of research on what is happening in other cities. And we also have been working with the administration to figure out where the ordinance ends, where policy begins, administrative policy begins. We had a couple of focus groups in October and November, a number of which participants are here today. So we had a couple of focus groups in October and November, and then we realized that while we have been hearing from stakeholders across the construction ecosystem, it was important that we hear from...
Go ahead.
Just a little distracting. It was important that we hear from members of the community. We also realized not one person and not one entity could represent the community writ large and represent folks from across the city. So we decided to design a survey and send it out. This survey was made public in January. It has gone out in council member newsletters. It has gone out in city council's newsletter. We have gone to a handful of community meetings and taken this on paper. There is a phone number which residents can call. We have used some of our partner organizations. I think some CDCs have sent this survey out. And we have to date just over 350 responses from residents across the city. Brooke will go into detail on that, but I guess one of the important pieces of this, and especially how residents play into this conversation, is one of the things we've struggled with in researching and developing this CBO is, we understand it's not the answer to every question. But what this will do is it will ensure that Cleveland remains competitive, and it will create opportunities for our residents, not the least of which are female, minority, and other small business owners. I think a really important stat I'd like to read and then turn it over to Brooke. There was a report done by the Department of Economic Development and the Office of Equal Opportunity, and it tracked 2019 to 2023 report on the status of projects reviewed and closed by the Office of Equal Opportunity, specifically focusing on projects that failed to meet MBE, FBE, CSB subcontracting goals and/or Cleveland resident utilization goals. The high-level summary is it represents almost $13.9 million in lost wealth creation opportunities for contractors and a total of 358 full-time employment opportunities for residents. Figuring those employees would have made at least $20 an hour, that's another $14.4 million in lost wages and $359,000 in lost payroll taxes. So the impact of not doing something like this, implementing this CBO, has real people and real numbers on the other side. So thank you again for considering this legislation. Brooke.
Good afternoon, council members. So as Jessica mentioned, we released this community survey back in December. The survey is still open and we're still collecting results, but we've done some analysis of the responses we've received so far. So we asked a series of questions. The first question we asked was, what concerns do you have about new construction in your neighborhood? And the number one concern that we heard from residents was just overall disruptions from construction. So this includes increased traffic, debris, noise, pollution, blocking of walkways, et cetera. The second concern we heard was unaffordable housing or increasing housing costs, whether that be from increased property values and property taxes, or just the building of luxury apartment buildings. The third was no concerns. Fourth, no new construction or not enough new construction happening in their neighborhoods. Number 5 was the lack of community benefit or community involvement in the development process. And number 6 was changing of the neighborhood aesthetic, whether that's new builds not matching old builds or the demolition of historic structures. The second question that we asked was, what can be done to lessen your concerns about new construction? And the number one thing we heard was, just tell us what's going on. Communicate with residents. The second was no concerns. Third, residents want to have community meetings and be able to provide input. We heard responses requesting that there be a variety of ways that they can be involved, whether that's in person or virtually or doing online surveys. The fourth was just minimizing the construction disruptions, so cleaning up construction at the end of the day, communicating traffic detours with residents, stuff like this. So the fifth thing we heard was building affordable housing. And lastly was just seeing improvements, sort of, show, don't tell kind of sentiments. We also asked residents to share what kind of community improvements they'd like to see generally. So this is a sample of what we heard. Installing public trash cans, youth programming, green and public space, affordable housing, neighborhood cleanups and beautification, employment and training opportunities for residents throughout all phases of the development, multimodal infrastructure, so bike infrastructure and pedestrian-friendly developments, home repair assistance for homeowners, and the demolition of vacant structures. And we collected zip codes when we did the surveys, so we've been able to map the responses that we received, and these responses were pretty representative across the city. So that's the map that's here on the right.
Happy to answer any questions any council members may have.
All right. Anything further? Any questions from members of council based on the community survey results? Any questions? All right. Thank you, staff. Thank you for providing the responses that came directly from residents here in our community on what matters the most to them. All right. Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed in for public comment? All right. And to members and those who are watching, we did receive responses from Toreen Spratt of Turner Construction, and I believe Dominic Gozan, who we will make sure we get those comments, questions, or concerns to the body. What we got? What does that say? Last name is Mitchell from SEIU. Mitchell? You come on up. For those who are watching and listening, this is a part of, every DPS meeting, we allow for public comment, and this is a place where we allow for public comment. So please come on up.
Hi, how you doing?
All right. You have 2 minutes, 3 minutes to provide any remarks that you would like us to consider.
Hello,
All right.
hello, council.
All right. Good morning.
My name
Afternoon.
is Autumnise Mitchell. I'm speaking on behalf of my union, SEIU Local 1.
Microphone.
Oh,
So we can hear you.
right here. Okay.
Yes.
SEIU Local 1, and our members, the janitors and service workers who keep the Cleveland top institutions and buildings, from the airport to Key Towers, the Museum of Art to Tower City, clean and safe for our Cleveland residents and visitors. I'm here to urge the council to strengthen the provisions of the legislation to ensure strong standards for service and support staff who work in the permanent jobs created by major projects that draw upon our city resources. Too often, agreements around labor standards focus exclusively on the temporary construction jobs while ignoring the lower wage industries such as janitorial and security, which have a permanent place in our such projects. And no better example of this exists than the Sherwin-Williams office project. Sherwin-Williams bullied and strong-armed the city and council for millions of dollars in giveaways to build their new headquarters while simultaneously throwing dozens of hard-working union janitors out in the street without jobs in the middle of winter. To this day, there is no obligation on the part of Sherwin-Williams to use responsible contracting to respect the rights of the workers in their current headquarters and their new buildings. Strengthening the long-term labor peace and good job provisions of our legislation can prevent a repeat of this travesty when it comes to the future construction and development which we all anticipate for our city. The race, class, gender dynamic and the discrepancy cannot be ignored. The majority of our workers in our union are Black. Most are women, most live in the city of Cleveland, and most do not have access to vehicles and depend on public transportation. That the labor rights of the Black women like myself have been ignored and intentionally undermined is a historical accident. However, it is not a future unseen. And through thoughtful and strategic legislation, City Council can begin to reverse the historical injustices that target marginalized and oppressed communities. As a city and enormous corporate and community sponsors prepare for a majority Juneteenth festival event next month, I encourage the members here to challenge themselves and the corporate community to both live and legislate the values of Juneteenth, which represents the emancipation of Black workers in the past and the liberation of Black workers in the future. Through good legislation, we can continue to build more just city, country, and world for all. no matter where we live, the color of our skin, or type of our work that we do.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell, for your comments. And if you would like, if you can leave a copy of your comments with our clerk, we would appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you. Madam Clerk, do you have anyone else besides the one signed in? No one else? Okay. Thank you. We'll close the public comment portion of the meeting now, and we'll move on to our guests. But before we go to our guests, if the administration would like to provide any opening remarks as well, or would you like to hold your remarks to after the guests? Director? So make sure you pull it close so we can hear you.
Through the chair to committee, the body as whole, and to everyone here. I just want to say that this community benefits ordinance is important in that we are in the process of spending hundreds of millions of dollars in economic investment in the city, and that investment should work like a rising tide and lift all boats. As it stands, just from my conversations with OEO and from reports I've received from them, we have basically had about 14 million in foregone or unrealized, I should say, economic opportunities for minority, female, and Cleveland small businesses. About 14.4 million in lost wage opportunities for Cleveland residences. That 28 million of lost wealth creation opportunity, wage creation opportunity, when we start talking about economic multiplier effect, represents about 85 million in lost economic opportunity for the city of Cleveland from 2019 until the present. It's important to pass a CBO and to have community benefits agreements that ensure that the benefits that the city anticipates receiving on projects actually deliver on that, because these are not just random goals. These are not just citizens saying we want things. These are about the city receiving the return on investment that it is putting into projects. And so we need community benefits agreements, we need incentive scorecards to quantify these benefits so that going forward we have a structure around delivering, monitoring, and measuring. So that's it.
Thank you, Director. Thank you for your remarks. We hear you loud and clear. We hear you loud and clear. Thank you, Director. All right. Next, we're gonna go to our guests to come forward and share their remarks. Remember, each guest has 3 minutes, and we'll start off in this order. And this list was done by in alphabetical order, so there was no particular order on this list. All right. So first, we're gonna have Mark Cunningham from Gilbane come up. Is Mark Cunningham here? Mark Cunningham, please come up. Shakori Davis, Next Generation Construction. Eric Gordon. No, he's probably out. Okay. We have Marcus Henry, Next Generation Construction. Arian Kirkpatrick, AKA Team. No Arians here. All right, we're going to start with this group first, and then we'll move on to our next group. Will be Tim Linville, Sandra Madison, Michelle Rose, Stephanie Turner, and Dave Wondolowski. All right? All right. All right, again, thank you for being here, and please make sure your mic is on green when you speak and that you're close enough where we can hear you and those who are watching can hear you, and we'll open it up for you for your 3 minutes.
All right. Chairman Harrison and Co-Chair House, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
And to the council. My remarks are somewhat extemporaneous this afternoon. We are in favor of the CBO. I think it is a good movement for the city to have put in place for these projects. One of the things that it speaks to is the mentorship program, and we see that it would be beneficial in terms of development of the MBE firms, for there to be something of a charter that's put in place. We see mentorship programs in place in a lot of organizations or a lot of situations where the ground rules are not established. And I think in order for this to be beneficial to help us in the development of some of these smaller firms is for everybody to understand that each of us have a role when it comes to this. If you're looking to develop your business, we are certainly here prepared to help make that happen, but it takes work on the part of both sides in order for these to be successful. So the point that I'm trying to make here this afternoon is we are in full support of mentorship programs, but if the ground rules are established up front, it will put us in a position that everybody walks away an overall winner, as opposed to just having legislation that's in place that allows for people to say, this is something that I can just get on the bandwagon for. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham, for your comments. Thank you. Mr. Marcus Henry.
Good afternoon. Firstly, would like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. On behalf of Next Generation, we've prepared some talking points, and to the CBO and to this committee, we'd like to offer the following. Ask the right questions. When a majority firm comes to the city and requests funding, you should feel free to ask lots of questions, such as, do you have a minority partner in this development deal or construction management deal? What role will they play? What type of financial stake will he or she have? What would you like to see your minority partner gain out of this deal? Can you share an example of a success story where this has taken place? Do you mind following up with us, sharing the success and outcomes of this agreement? Minority contractors that benefit from this ordinance should be held at an even higher standard than the majority firm if they benefit from this ordinance, considering this is a development and construction management opportunity. If a minority contractor is on this level, you should ask the following questions. Considering you are in a position to scale, are you willing to mentor another minority firm like a minority trade partner? Considering you are in construction management or developer's role, are you willing to pay the minority firm that you are mentoring faster than the 60 to 90-day pay cycle? Most minority firms will not meet the pre-approval standards put in place by majority firms. They will not meet, they will need to meet the requirements needed to be able to work directly for a construction manager. Considering that you yourself might have been in this position, how can you help? Can you give an example of doing this? What outcomes would you like to see come out of this process? Identifying the experts in each community and listening to them. Talk to them. The ecosystem can provide a game plan on improving the community, but ultimately, they can save you time and energy with their input. Create an ecosystem that helps non-union contractors grow into a union-affiliated organization. One union employee costs roughly $120,000 a year. If someone has 4 union employees, their payroll would cost them roughly $500,000 per year, or $45,000 a month. That small contractor would have to float almost $150,000 before their first draw. Everyone cannot afford to be a union contractor. Currently, there is no sole ecosystem in place that is accountable for the development of community contracting or pipeline development contracting where 95% of City of Cleveland residents and diverse contractors reside. We understand that all projects in the City of Cleveland cannot be union. Most union projects almost always hit their inclusion goals. We are established and working together to improve, The ecosystem should have timely information. Timely information could be defined as information given as soon as documents are submitted to planning. Access to this information should not be used for criticizing projects from the construction side of things, but strategizing and building the right program to support what's to come. Communities cannot wait until construction is weeks from starting to plot, plan, and strategize. This ecosystem needs to inform developers of who and what resources are available in said community. The developer should be treated as a partner, not as a foe. Even more importantly, this ecosystem can help those contractors who might be an added value to this project establish the financing and education needed to work with this team on the next project if this works out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Marcus Henry from NextGen for your comments, and we'll move to Mr. Shakori Davis.
We're a team.
We're a team? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, comments
Thank you, Councilor.
came together. Thank you.
On that point, can we get a copy of what his question?
Yes, we'll get them. And if you can provide a copy of your comments electronically to our clerks, we would appreciate it. All right? Next, we'll have Arian Kirkpatrick, a.k.a. Team.
Okay. Thank you, City Council, for not only recognizing what we already know to be self-evident, but ensuring through legislation that we create an ecosystem that can see radical change. There is definitely a gap between supply and demand in construction that has failed the Black and brown community. There are barriers to entry for communities of color and women. You have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the time. Sometimes we have to do the work even though we don't see a glimmer on the horizon that is actually going to be possible. We have to make the unimaginable possible. We have to believe we can and do it. For me, I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept. The acceptance of not being participants in the ever-growing economic growth of the city of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County is unacceptable for communities of color and women. While I am considered relatively successful because I have managed to grow in what the majority allows me to grow in, I am an oddity that shines through a sliver of a crack. I am shining amongst my peers that look like me, but the candle does not stay lit in a room of folks that don't look like me. It is true that we have pockets of success in our community. What really is a pocket is just a group, area, or a mass of something that is separate and different from what's around us. A pocket is loose change. The CPO is the legislation that we need that will change the pendulum of our economic growth as a community. A community where the minorities are the majority here in Cleveland, yet receive less than 1% of contracting and no representation of workforce where we live. Loose change does not change the poverty level of the minority community. Loose change does not change Cleveland from being the worst place for Black women to live as far as health care, education, and economics. Loose change does not generate wealth creation for a marginalized community. We heard, and it's listed in your CPO, that out of the contracts in the annual report that only 6.5% of the city's prime contracts were awarded to MBEs. 21% were awarded to FBEs, and I'm sure that that 21% did not look like me. 45% were awarded to CSBs, a number that we need to be cautious of. In this ordinance, this particular ordinance, we are talking about equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. While I am all for Cleveland and all in, that number does not represent the minority community. We cannot let the acronyms of CSB and SBE take over MBE and FBE. With Cuyahoga County, they came out with the report that 4% of MBE contracts went to 4.62% went to minority contractors. In the small print on maybe the 400th page, we saw that that number was actually less than 1% for minority contractors. We need to take charge of our own reality. The CBO will give us the teeth we need to change 3 things for minorities. Because without all 3, we aren't doing anything. We need to concentrate on workforce, enterprise, and community. We can't have a community grow without a workforce, and we can't have a workforce grow without an enterprise. It is important that this CBO does 3 things: exposure, engagement, and empowerment for our community. When I was 5 years old, I protested for McDonald's to have black franchises. We weren't allowed to do it. It's a shame that at 58 years old, I am sitting here to ask for black folk and brown folk to be allowed to be part of the economic growth for the city of Cleveland. Thank you.
Thank you, Arian, for your powerful remarks. Thank you. We do have Eric Gordon, our CEO of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. Mr. Gordon.
Thank you. Through the chair to the committee members, first I apologize for my tardiness. I did get a tardy slip down here. It's been a busy day.
All right.
Thank you for allowing me to testify today regarding the Community Benefits Ordinance 297-2023 related to community benefits agreements. Many of you, all of you know me as the long-serving CEO of CMSD, but what you may not know is that I was actually an original member of the Community Benefits Agreement that we created in February of 2013. Good to see my good friend here, which is also board policy for the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. Or that the existing Community Benefits Agreement has only been amended one time in its 10-year history, and that was to expand career opportunities for Max Hayes High School students back in March of 2014. You may also not be aware that I helped found the Architecture, Construction, and Engineering Trades, or ACE mentoring program in Cleveland 14 years ago, and that in those 14 years we've had nearly 2,000 students who have participated in ACE-related mentoring programs, more than 70 college graduates that chose the ACE fields, and have been awarded more than $1.4 million in scholarships. You may not know that I actually remain on the ACE mentoring board to this day, and that I've actually co-chaired the GCP Construction Diversity Initiative, which is now called Construction, Utilities, and Buildings Equity, or CUBE, the sector partnership, since February of 2019. You also probably do know of my advocacy to start up the Planning and Career Exploration Work, or PACE curriculum, in the Cleveland School District, and then to create the public-private partnership with the Greater Cleveland Career Consortium. I share some of this hidden background with you today to let you know how very important this Community Benefits Agreement Ordinance is to me. The only place generating new future employees is K-12 education. I'm going to say that again. The only place that's generating new future employees is K-12 education. And for years, this community and communities across the country have tried to solve workforce diversity and pipeline problems from stealing the very few diverse and the very limited pipeline from each other, instead of using moves like this ordinance can create to invest deeply in future employees as they move through their educational setting. The emphasis in this ordinance on participation in mentorship programming, apprenticeships, internships, and network opportunities for Cleveland youth and students is so valuable to providing those who are currently underrepresented in the development sector, blacks and Hispanics, women, people in poverty, city residents, the visibility and access to the wonderful career opportunities being financed with city resources. If passed, I am committed to ensuring that the CMSD PACE team, along with the Greater Cleveland Career Consortium, works closely with the Cleveland Citywide Development Corporation Advisory Review to help council monetize the in-kind value of career camps, career capstone projects, classroom and virtual visits, career-focused competitions, preparing students for employability, site tours, coaching, mentorship, apprenticeships, sponsorships, community service hosts, internships, job placements, job shadowing, and summer jobs, as well as opportunities for educator externships and professional workshops that help my educators prepare our young people for the construction careers. The importance of allowing these kinds of benefits is also an opening door for small businesses, MBEs, and FBEs who are often gated out of community benefits because of the monetary commitment. These are in-kind resources that, if done well, can allow access to current MBE, FBE, and small business owners and provide the diversity pipeline that our community wants and deserves. So I urge this council to consider these elements of the community benefit ordinance carefully, which I believe, when implemented effectively, will greatly expand opportunities for jobs and careers with family-sustaining wages and benefits for the children of Cleveland that I serve. Again, thank you for allowing me to testify today.
Thank you, CEO Gordon. Truly appreciate your comments today. And if you can leave a copy of your remarks with our clerk, we'd appreciate it. All right, thank you. Well, thank you all for the first group providing your comments. Please stay and listen. We'll go into question and answer because there may be questions for you from members of this body that we may call upon you to come back up to provide additional input. All right? Thank you. Thank you. All right. Before we move on to the next group, I do want to recognize some individuals that we do have in the audience with us who have not signed up to speak today. But we have Chelsea Maldonado, who is here. Just recognize Chelsea. Jose Feliciano Sr., who is with us as well in the audience, who, if I may add, was one of the original signatories years ago as relates to community benefits as well. Lorraine Vega over at Key Bank is also in the audience with us today. We also have Mr. Darrell Fields, who is in the audience with us as well. And we have been joined by Marsha Maccabee, the president and CEO of the Greater Cleveland Urban League as well. And we'll have her come up to the table in a few moments, all right? And so just want to make sure we recognize some powerful individuals. And we also have Jill, who is the president of Towards Employment, who's also with us here today. I didn't want to mess up the last name, all right? Thank you. And so next we're going to bring up Tim Linville. Tim Linville, would you please come up from Construction Employees Association, Sandra Madison, Robert P. Madison International, Michelle Rose, Ohio Means Jobs, and Stephanie Turner, Fast Real Estate Services, and Dave Wondolowski, Cleveland Building and Construction Trades Council. Come on up. And I'm going to ask that we pull this other chair. We're going to bring President Maccabee up now as well, too. Can we get that chair down? Somebody? Or you can come on this end.
Just what she's asking is if you guys can just scoot down, everybody scoot
All right,
down.
she's right here. Thank you. All right. All right, again, thank you all for coming this morning. As you heard, please direct your questions and comments to the chair, and you have 3 minutes to provide your remarks this morning. Obviously, if you hear a noise here, that is the timer going off to let you know your time and just to kind of wrap it a little bit. But as you see, we provided some deference to you, to close out your remarks. All right, Mr. Linville.
Thank you, Chairman Harrison and Vice Chair House. Thank you for having me, council members.
Thank you for being here.
I'm the CEO of Construction Employers Association. We're the contractors group who employ a union construction workforce. Large and small contractors, diverse contractors. Since 2010, when I joined CEA, we went from 2 diverse contractors to over 30 diverse contractors in that time. And some of them in the room with us today, very, very proud members, and we're proud of them. We've been committed to Cleveland since 1916 when we were formed as a trade association.
Can the distinguished gentleman speak in the mic? Thank you.
I'll scoot up. Sorry
Or
about
you
that.
can move it up. These mics are real bad.
I was a part of the Fannie Lewis Residence and Construction Advisory Committee since 2010, and we were disappointed to see that law outlawed by the state of Ohio. We were probably the only trade construction group in Ohio that was disappointed in that state law. Stood with Mayor Jackson's administration in defending that law. It was partly in response to the outlaw of Fannie Lewis and residence ordinances like it that we formed Cleveland Builds in 2020. And Cleveland Builds is all about getting Clevelanders into the construction trades, into meaningful careers, not jobs, not temporary employment, but careers in construction. And also, we were instrumental and are instrumental in continuing the work that CEO Gordon mentioned from the ACE Mentor program, which is targeting getting young people into the professional aspects of the architecture, construction, and engineering industries. And it's been very successful in doing that. We are also committed to the development and success of minority and female-owned companies, contracting companies, as seen in our longstanding educational training and networking connecting efforts through Contractors Assistance Association and through the CEA itself. We are also pursuing a new construction management degree program with Cleveland State, and that is up and going in the planning stages and hopefully will be in effect next fall, 2024. So we are committed to the success of Cleveland and Clevelanders. We support this ordinance because it is also aimed at Clevelanders' success. I appreciate the reporting and transparency elements of the ordinance. I think that's what's a big part of what's been missing in the private DE&I efforts to date in our industry. And it has to be meaningful and consistent data to be effective, in my opinion. We're committed to the workforce development and outreach that is included in the large economic development grants in this ordinance. Cleveland Builds will be there to support that outreach. And also to the collaboration and coordination that I think is a potential for the city to do with other economic development funders in the area. Thank you, and that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Linville. I appreciate your remarks. And next we'll have Sandra Madison from Robert P. Madison International.
Thank you for inviting me here today.
Absolutely.
I am the CEO of Robert P. Madison, as you mentioned, an architectural firm here in Cleveland. And I'm proud to say that next year we'll be celebrating 70 years of business here. So since then, since Robert Madison started the firm 70 years ago, there's been a lot of changes. I've only been here for 33 years, and I've seen some changes as well. The CBO is wonderful. I love it. I love the fact that we have an opportunity to put this in place, and I truly support it. But I'd like to see more structure in there for design firms, a lot more inclusion for MD, FBA, and CSB firms. From design firms need to have a little bit more beef in there. I see a lot of things related to construction. Minority professions in the city of Cleveland are important because we represent, for young people who want to aspire to be designers, whether it's engineers, architects, or whatever the profession may be in the design field, to know that they can one day open a firm here in Cleveland and survive. Our firm has worked with the ACE program, so we know how important that is. When we walk in and talk to students, they don't even know that we exist. They don't even know what we do here in Cleveland. But it's important to know that if that's what they want to do, that they too can do this. So with that being said, I was just reading through the ordinance, and the first, and second paragraphs mention recognizing disparities in construction and development, but it doesn't say anything about the disparities in the design profession, and there's many. So the CBO also mentions in paragraph 4 the city's annual reports about the 6.5% prime contracts were awarded to MBs and 25% to FBs. But I'm wondering, is that inclusive of everybody's architects and engineers in construction? I'd like to see that separated out. What is it? How much of that is really architectural or engineering design on the design side. I have my own speculations, but anyway. Our office today has a total of 18 employees. And over 50% of those employees are minority. So a lot of young people gravitate toward us, but we have to compete very strongly for our employees. And because we're small, offering benefits and all of that, we can't compete with the benefits and the offerings of a larger firm, even with offering wages. So this ordinance could help us, with contracts to be able to even grow our firm and to offer better benefits and compete more. Because a small business designer, no, I'm going to hurry up. Small business, quick. Okay, so, so SBE, it doesn't really, it's not really beneficial to the design profession because it's so large. So it's a firm of our size, we're competing with sizes of 50 or more because of the way it's structured. I know you don't have a lot to do with that, but just saying that. So I'd like to see 191A revised to include something more with associate design consultants, architecture, engineering. I'd like to see 191A, the dashboard, also to include something that says that, have them be looked at for or graded on whether they have design professionals on their team when development comes here. Because many times I see they do not. And they always go toward the construction side to make up that difference. And so thank you for letting me finish. And that's all I have to say.
Absolutely. Thank you for the comments, and you definitely gave us something to consider that I don't recall us having a deep dive into, but we appreciate that those comments. Thank you. We have next Michelle Rose, Ohio Means Jobs.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Rose, and I am the Executive Director of Ohio Means Jobs, which serves as the Workforce Development Board, or the public workforce system for our city and county. This means that federal workforce dollars flow to the state and then to our local area to help connect workers to jobs and businesses to talent, and I oversee the strategy, programming, and operations of that system. Thank you for the invitation to speak before Council today regarding the Community Benefit Ordinance under consideration. I was also pleased to attend one of the focus group sessions held at Tri-C last fall. It's always a good day to talk about workers, about the safety and beauty of our community around us, and about how to make good policy, so I'm very pleased to be here. I want to spend my time briefly updating you on the important investment proposed by Mayor Bibb and passed by this City Council in January of this year. $10 million in city ARPA funding to grow the pipeline of Clevelanders who are engaged, trained, and employed in what we call built environment jobs, and how this relates to the CBO and the work ahead. Just this morning, Councilman Starr hosted Ohio Means Jobs, Cleveland Builds, and others at Friendly Inn to share the opportunity to enroll in high-quality job training programs, to access wraparound supports to set residents up for success, and to learn about what employment opportunities await on the other side of training. We will do this over and over again in every ward and with every partner until we reach the commitment made to Council to enroll 3,000 residents in training programs over the next 4 years, producing new cohorts of ready workers to remake our waterfronts, construct new buildings, decarbonize and restore our soil, homes, and air, and accelerate the pace of deploying broadband to every home in the city. I actually believe we're on track, or will be, to enroll more than the projected 3,000, and want to emphasize that we have committed to ensuring that these participants reflect the diversity of our city. They will be at least 65% Black Clevelanders and at least 13% Latino or Hispanic Clevelanders. We also seek to increase by 10 times the number of women in construction, bringing that number to 30%. I also want to note that we have allocated $1 million of that $10 million to work directly with more than 200 MBEs, because part of the equation has to be the development not just of the workforce broadly, but the growth of today's current workforce into the owners, subs, and primes of tomorrow and their connection to new opportunities. So it's one thing to talk about the need to have a diverse, prepared workforce to undertake this innovative, exciting, transformational physical projects we're talking about building every day. And it's another to be laying the groundwork with our residents to make that happen. I am proud and grateful that this work is already underway. The council president earlier today called this being proactive, and I completely agree. The funding investments already passed will be at work throughout Cleveland this summer. 13 trusted community partners, many of them here today, will be scaling, getting youth and adults interested in the skilled trades and infrastructure jobs, all while we ramp up our assistance to smaller firms who are ready to grow, but as you've heard, are too often left out. So more generally, as a workforce practitioner and labor policy advisor, I support the ordinance's inclusion of language to address housing, parks and green space, and believe that enforceability as much as possible will help ensure that impact matches intent. I will continue to work with Director Tessa Jackson and Director Tyson Mitchell to make sure that the city's incentives linked to my organization's job fairs, job orders, and job postings, and that those are good jobs with good wages. We all have a few good tools, and it's our job to make sure that the toolboxes are working together. Thank you again for the invitation to speak today.
Thank you, Michelle Rose. Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Stevie Turner from Vast Real Estate Services.
Good afternoon to the chairman, Hairston, co-chairwoman, House, and members of City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today on the Community Benefits Ordinance. My name is Stephanie Turner, and I'm representing Akil Hamid, who is the broker, president, and CEO of Fast Real Estate Services. Fast Real Estate Services is a full-service, minority-owned real estate company, and we are MBE certified by the state of Ohio. Our comments include minority-owned professional services, such as the real estate industry and real estate professionals. We should be recognized in the ordinance as part of the roles we play in the construction industry. In 2020, the real estate industry contributed 40% of GDP, yet this high growth area remains a low priority. There are reasons why minority businesses in the real estate industry should be recognized, and they include the following. We close the racial wealth gap. Median wealth for white families is about 12 times that for black families that average $140,000. 1 in 4 black households have zero net worth. It is projected that by 2053, median wealth for black families will fall to zero. Small businesses and entrepreneurs, we have the opportunity to be wealth builders in our society. Secondly, we strengthen the local economies by supporting black owners, in turn, where they are supporting their families and employees and other businesses by providing those essential services in our neighborhoods. And then we foster job creation. In 2012, census data showed that black-owned businesses created 1 million jobs compared to white-owned businesses, which created 5 million jobs. So support for black businesses fostering job creation, because we tend to support our local communities, helping them to achieve the financial stability. And lastly, we celebrate black culture, and we uplift our communities and foster a sense of pride. So my final comments are that, cities such as Charlotte, Chicago, Los Angeles, Memphis, and Milwaukee, just as an example, have been working with the city of Atlanta on taking on equitable approaches to procurement that help ensure equal business opportunities. And in taking on these initiatives, they first had to identify, cities did, that to tackle challenges within the city's infrastructure, looking at all the insufficient resources, I'm going to finish in just a second, no problem. A need for re-engineered business practices when you're dealing with small businesses, decentralized, disjointed processes to look at those processes, making it a little more easier for small businesses to do business, political will and cultural changes with a goal of making economic opportunity more inclusive and using these opportunities to improve the outcomes and conditions of disadvantaged businesses. So I thank you all for the time and looking forward to any future engagement.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Stevie Turner, for your comments. And next we have Dave Wondolowski, the Cleveland Building and Construction Trades Council.
Good afternoon, Council. Thanks for I have a little bit of an allergy issue
problem.
here, so I'm going
I
to try
get
to
it.
get through this. I won't take 3 minutes. First of all, I want to thank you for having me out here this afternoon, along with the rest of the stakeholders here. We're a 110-year-old organization this year, and we represent thousands of members within the Northeast Ohio in the organized construction industry. I do want to thank you all for, in the construction of this ordinance, recognizing the work that our partner CEA and the building trades have done in already creating Cleveland Builds as a pipeline into the construction industry. Other attempts at community benefit ordinances haven't been successful. Often because they allowed cafeteria-style plans, and they would let a developer pick and choose what benefits the community got. This actually codifies that ordinance, and I think it's going to energize this body to actually help and engage the community to make sure that they understand that there are ample opportunities for employment and careers in the building trades unions, and for that we're very happy. We support the ordinance in its current form, and we also appreciate the transparency and the teeth in the ordinance as well, that we think that we believe will help forward your initiatives here. It'll provide the accountability that we badly need in this city to make sure that everybody benefits from these construction projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wondolowski, for your comments. Teeth are very important. As we heard earlier, as the council president mentioned, if we begin to reduce, you end up with nothing, right? And you want something that can have some meaning and to it and has some bite to it. And so I appreciate that. And next we'll go with Ms. Jill. Ms. Jill, I apologize. I did not want to mess your last name up. The president of Towards Employment, and then the president of the Greater Cleveland Urban League will wrap us up.
Thank you very much, committee chairs and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. So my name is Jill Rizica.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm the president and CEO of Towards Employment. Towards Employment has 45 years of experience successfully helping Cleveland residents gain the tools they need to find a job, navigate life's obstacles, and secure a path towards a long-term career, while helping local businesses find the talent they need to thrive. We provide industry-informed career readiness training with robust wraparound services to assist with barrier removal, access to technical training and on-the-job training to build skills, deep employer connections for job placement, and intensive post-employment coaching for strong retention and support for advancement. We're honored to be a long-term partner of the Cleveland Cuyahoga Ohio Means Jobs, and their support contributes to our outcomes of placing over 300 people per year in full-time employment, with another 1,500 entering or moving along a career pathway, helping to secure average starting wages this past year of over $15 an hour, and linking participants with thousands of support services, including transportation, rental assistance, uniforms, and housing connections, and opening nearly 1,200 legal cases annually to remove employment barriers such as expunging records, reinstating driver license, and clearing debt. 80% of those we serve are from the city of Cleveland. Over 80% are Black or brown residents. Over 2/3 have criminal justice involvement, and 2/3 have no post-secondary education. Yet our graduates are motivated and committed to work. The construction trades offer promising pathways to economic mobility, and we're excited to be part of the City Built Environment Collaborative that will help build skills and on-ramps to these life-changing careers. And we further applaud Council's leadership in raising up the importance of the community benefits framework to ensure that the anticipated infrastructure investments create true opportunities for community residents. As a workforce organization, we look forward to helping our graduates participate in the proposed apprenticeships, internship, and networking opportunities, and improved access to quality jobs, for which CBAs have the potential to lay strong groundwork. Working to gather meaningful and timely community input, establish clear expectations about what good looks like, and building strong enforcement mechanisms will help ensure that CBAs can deliver against their promise. So these components are in the ordinance, but we would encourage even more specificity in some of the areas. So with regard to community, input, require adequate time, facilities, and support for the development and formulation of each CBA. Talking to community members and gathering input, giving them time to participate and process that information. Transparency, the legislation provides for many elements of the CBA which may be included, but being clearer about what those baseline elements that must be included would also be helpful. Job quality. While wages are extremely important, they're not the only component of job quality. So thinking about benefits, flexible scheduling, and opportunities for advancement could be additional considerations. And then I echo about the enforcement. Teeth is everything. So thank you for the opportunity to share these views. We look forward to collectively working toward our vision of a workforce system where all people, regardless of race, criminal history, or where they live, can achieve economic mobility through the power and purpose of work so they and their families can thrive. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks today. We appreciate it. And if you would like, you can leave a copy of your comments with our clerk. All right. All right. And last but not least, we have our president of the Greater Cleveland Urban League, Marsha Maccabee, who will wrap us up.
Thank you very much to Chair Harrison and Co-Chair House. Thank you for the opportunity to answer today. The Urban League of Greater Cleveland is a 106-year-old organization where we empower communities and change lives, and specifically in the areas of workforce, education and youth development, economic development and entrepreneurship, all undergirded by social justice and civil rights. And I'm pleased to say that we most recently had the opportunity to use this tool of community benefits when called by this community to assist with the Sherwin-Williams issue. And by using the community benefits approach, we were able to put together a construction accelerator program to help businesses who want to earn a greater entrance into the field and do more work by building greater capacity. So whereas the Urban League of Greater Cleveland was a collaborator in the development of and signatory to the first City of Cleveland MOU for community benefits, and whereas we have upheld the tenets of that agreement over the past decade, we are pleased to see the opportunity for the memorandum to move to law. Over the past decade, billions of dollars of development have occurred, some honoring the existing CBA MOU to a greater extent than others. As protests and outcries for more and larger opportunities on projects have occurred, this is the first strategic measure that acknowledges the fact that it will take a building the plane while flying it approach to move the needle. We applaud the City of Cleveland for taking the bold step to move to legislation and to call out steps along the way that will ensure that there will be ready and capable firms to operate in larger roles on the many projects that this community will see over the next decades. The federal infrastructure bill continues to provide additional opportunities for building, and this kind of legislation meets that opportunity at the right time with the right components. Community benefits are designed to provide more assets to communities than just the brick and mortar of the building project. This proposed ordinance is designed to include accountability for participation in city-funded projects. Additionally, it calls out for larger scale projects the need to provide more engagement that will support the scale and growth of MBE, FBE, and CSBs and industry workforce. It even recognizes one of the major hurdles for minority businesses to participate in scale, that is access to capital, bonding, insurance, and other capacity building mechanisms. Going even further, this proposed ordinance seeks to address affordable housing issues while providing neighborhood infrastructure and safety improvements, to name a few. Kudos again to the council for recognizing the need to include community feedback on projects being built in their neighborhoods. The ordinance is strategic in designing processes, methods, and procedures for convening and engaging with developers around the tenets of the ordinance. Finally, it has accountability baked in, teeth for enforcement, and penalties for noncompliance. We have learned a lot over the past 10 years attempting to use the existing tools in our toolbox to move transformation in building projects. Once again, the Urban League applauds Council President Griffin and the entire City Council for this bold step forward. We fully support this effort and stand ready, as before, to participate in all levels of assistance as needed. The one suggestion we have is to put any remaining ARPA dollars into a loan fund specifically for assisting minority contractors with growth potential, so that with that first contract, they can be successful in delivery. Dollars invested in that way would create an evergreen return on ARPA dollars, unlike any other kind of investment. So we thank you for the opportunity today to speak, and we continue to partner wherever you call upon us. Thank you.
Thank you, President Maccabee. Thank you for your comments. Please share a copy of your remarks with our clerk. And one of the points you just mentioned, as relates to creating some sort of fund that can be evergreen, is a discussion that we have been considering here within council. So, you are right there in terms of our thinking as well. So we thank you for your comments. And so if the group can please stay here that we have, I'm going to turn it over to my illustrious co-chair, Councilwoman Stephanie House, who's going to take it from here until we wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Hairston. So now I know we have a couple of council members who have some questions. Just to set the table for council members, we know this has been a long day. People have, other things. So we ask that for at least initially, we want to start off to have 5 minutes for council members, and then we can come back if there are some other, follow-up questions that we need to have. So with that said, we are going to start with Councilman Starr to get us started off, followed up by Councilman Slife.
Thank you, chairs, both my colleagues, for hosting this opportunity for us to discuss this very important ordinance. And I'm looking at the clock too. She told me 5 minutes, and I do not want the chair to give me that look, so I'm gonna get straight to it. To the chair, to the director of OEO, Director Mitchell, my question would to be for you is related to OEO penalty on projects. What has determined that type of percentage on projects for OEO penalties?
I'm sorry, through the chair, could you repeat that?
So my question would be, all right, if someone is in non-compliance with OEO, what determines the dollar amount or the percentage amount for those penalties? Through the chair to the director.
Through the chair to the councilperson. Penalties are set currently through statute. It is based upon our investment, the city of Cleveland's investment. But I don't know if you're specifically talking about, through the chair to the councilman, this ordinance or just in general?
Just in general.
Oh, just in general, right, okay, I'm with you. It's 1/8 of 1%. It's very low. I know you all talk about it as a council during budget hearings, and I think it's on you all to raise that penalty if you feel so the need. It's very low right now. We've had some contractors to say, we'll just write a check and be done with it.
And to that point, that's something that I want to bring to my colleagues. Also to the staff, can we possibly look at amending that type of part of the charter or whatever OEO penalties for development, because that penalty is real low, and this good faith effort that we always keep hearing, it doesn't be no work being done. And within my little bit of time of here, I've dealt with developers who said they made a good faith effort, but they never worked with OEO, and then come back and say they haven't got no people to respond as far as contractors or anything like that. So I definitely want to know through the chair people, can we have our staff work on looking at revising that or what we need to do to increase that? Okay. My last part would be, I know under section 191A.07, they have the penalties for non-compliance. I was trying to figure out, is there a way that we could amend this piece of legislation and add in a clawback provision? And what I mean by that is, it's so easy to pay the little $150,000 to $300,000 penalty if we have a $80 million, $30 million development. But at the end of the day, if someone is not in compliance with OEO or anything like that, or if they choose not to honor those provisions such as MBE, FBE, all those type of things, I believe we should have a clawback provision from council in which we can be able to claw back all benefits if they do not reach these goals that they set forth through the beginning. So my question to the chair, to the table, or to anyone, can we speak about possibly clawback provision to be added into this ordinance to be able to hold those contractors or developers accountable for non-compliance of work? Because sometimes it may get through the cracks of council members. It may slide through the city administration, but at the end of the day, once we get to a point where we look like 80% of this project hasn't been done and there has not been no minority business enterprise or FBE, or those have not been met by those goals, how can we hold these developers accountable? So my question is to the table, is there anything you all can comment or chime in about clawback policy regarding non-compliance of penalties?
Thank you, Councilman. Jennifer, Attorney O'Leary, can you have any comments?
Thank you. Through the chair to the councilperson, the current language as drafted is introduced does have a clawback provision in the penalty section. So that's the language, recovery of previously provided financial assistance. And that would be for a developer that doesn't comply with any provision of the community benefits agreement.
So just what part of the section are you talking about? Section 20191A or?
0.07, penalties for noncompliance.
And within that clawback provisions to the chair to our attorney, would that be for all the clawbacks on any financial support, or is it just certain parts of the clawback?
Through the chair to the councilman, that would depend on the violation, the type of project, and the type of city financial assistance.
So would it be, through the chair, would it be like case by case or?
Correct, but it is an available penalty for violating the CBA.
Yeah. So within the first part of the section, to the chair, to our attorney, says failure by a developer to comply with any provisions of a CBA as determined by the city in sole discretion may result in denial or termination of city financial assistance and recovery of previously provided financial assistance. That will be any type of clawback if the developer does not fulfill their requirement from the front end or the back end, no matter how far they are with the project. To the chair.
Correct, in the city's discretion.
And when you say about the city's discretion, can we elaborate on that just a little bit, and I'll be done, Chair.
Well, it's up to the director and what is in the actual agreement to determine if that clawback happens. You know, there needs to be some flexibility because, you know, if you don't meet your goals or if you don't provide a benefit that was agreed to, that's a different type of failure to comply than if you forget to submit a quarterly report, for example. So that's where kind of the discretion comes in.
Okay, and that's just my point, and I know, Chairwoman, I'm wrapping up, but I just want to make sure we do have that in place because I've worked with some developers on a project, and they were cool with not fulfilling the MBE requirements. And they were cool with just paying almost $150,000 on almost a $40 million project. But within that clause, the development was $1.7 million almost for MBE. So what I'm trying to make sure we have something in place so we don't have to deal with that as members of this council, where a developer just chose, I'm gonna just say it, they just chose not to work with OEO to be able to get everything in place as far as MBE, but then they were quick to say, hey, I just paid a penalty and then just swallow the cost of that 1.7. I just want to make sure that does not continue to happen to myself or anyone in our wards or any other council member. I just want to make sure that we have that handled, that does not happen at all.
Absolutely, Councilman. That's exactly why the working group wanted to have stronger penalties in the ordinance rather than just the percentage.
Yep. Thank you. And I yield, Chair.
Thank you so much, Councilman Starr. Next, we have Councilman Slive.
Thank you, and I should have said this earlier, but thank you again to our staff, because I can't imagine having to organize just even this level of guests and making sure you're all available was really a heavy lift. So well done to the staff sitting behind us. This has been a great day. And thank you to the guests in front of us. And just listening, I think that there have been a lot of really valid points about the professional services from Ms. Madison and Ms. Turner. Ms. Rizika? No. Okay. I'll turn it. That'll be it. No. About understanding how we can ensure that the benefits that are being offered to employees. I've been thinking for a long time that that's something that we should focus on to make sure as we look in-house to improve our own employee benefits, to make sure that we're outwardly expressing that. The one thing that I would like to come back to, I think an exciting part of this is how we've taken really the opportunities for jobs in the construction sector, understood that that's an area of growth. It's an area that we have just an untapped community that is eager to get into these jobs, and how we can maximize that. Added on to the fact that there are other ways, as we spoke this morning, about how we can ensure that benefits are felt across the city, be they through employment or be they through infrastructure or parks or what have you. I think a third element that was alluded to during the public comment about the ongoing jobs, the public comment specifically from SEIU about, if we are providing financial assistance to a corporation, for example, who is going to be hiring janitorial staff. But I think that it logically also extends into, if we're offering a 30-year TIF, so we are in a 30-year financial transaction with whatever entity, sometime in that 30-year period, the HVAC system is going to need repaired. And how do we make sure that, the people who benefited from the construction during the early stages of the relationship are still being tied into the latter stages of the financial relationship. So my question back to, I guess, Ms. O'Leary is, how does during your conversations and the conversations of all those who have been engaged in this more deeply than I have been, how does the enduring jobs factor into kind of the menu of options that have been presented as that can be part of a community benefits agreement? And with the one-pager we got on delineating the differences between the legislation, the individual agreements, and administrative policy, how does that align with the legislation, and where would it align with agreements and policy?
Through the chair to the councilman. So we do appreciate those comments, and we tried to include the entire ecosystem of construction in the ordinance. So in Section A, which is required in every baseline agreement for projects with city financial assistance of over $250,000, there is language that says, from any and all of the following, including at the team leadership, pre-construction, construction, trade and craft subcontractor, professional services, real estate and property management, and/or post-project hiring levels. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that was meant to capture a lot of those jobs within before and after the project.
Okay, then thank you for that clarification. The follow-up would just be, could you then walk me through, and maybe this is an unfair question to ask of you, Ms. O'Leary, because you are the council attorney, you're not the administration, but how could the, Mr. Mitchell, I just want to call you Spivey, because I grew up with a Tyson Spivey, so I have to stop myself. How do we anticipate that would be memorialized into the actual agreement, maybe in more depth, more specifics that speak to this issue and maybe speak to some of the concerns or interests of people at the table, people who have spoken in public comment?
Through the chair to the council person, it is something that we need to look at. Admittedly, by hearing that information at the table, it did bring some more thoughts to my head that we need to focus on that. It is in there as the council, as your attorney stated, is there. So we need to be more intentional in the language of the CBA to point that out. And even within our office, we need to capture those numbers that happen after construction, because we shut down from a computer standpoint. We got the numbers, these are your numbers, but who's handling the maintenance? Those things are very important. Who's handling the landscape? And if you enter a contract, if you can enter a contract based upon what you're projecting, we'll collect that information. But if you don't enter that contract, now during the monitoring period, we won't capture that information. So we have to adjust a little bit to include that information.
Thank you. And so I'll just say to the chair, I'm interested in exploring if there's a way to suss it out a little more in the legislation too. Not because I don't trust you, but just typically, the administration very often comes seeking authorization to enter into contract. Council will approve the ordinance, but we're not engaged in the actual negotiation of the contract. So just as an assurance for us, if it's a value for this body to ensure the longer term permanent jobs, how do we make sure that that's embodied in the legislation and that we're not just trusting that an administration would memorialize that within the ultimate agreement? So that'll be an area of interest, I think, over the next few weeks as we continue discussions. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for our guest that we're having? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry for my delay, but I do want to make sure that I have a couple of questions regarding this. Workforce has been a big issue. And I know that we have Mr. Wondolowski, Mr. Linville, as well as Ms. Maccabee and others, Ms. Rose. How and what can we do to really address some of the challenges around workforce? And what should be our collective goals that we actually set as council to reach some of those workforce goals? And will they be, is that goal to make them all skilled, unions apprentice, or unskilled and non-union? So just trying to get a better understanding of that whole picture.
Council President, through the chair, I'm glad you asked that question, because for years we've asked council people to help, but we need you to help identify young people, young adults in your ward that are underemployed, that are ready to go to work, that have reliable transportation, because we need them, and we need them now. Not later, but we need them now. So you can notify your CDCs, any community centers in your wards, anybody looking for employment. Now is the time to send them to us. So we have we have Ryan Puente from the city, and we have Katie Gallagher from the county sitting on our board. We have full transparency at Cleveland Builds. So you're going to see firsthand how this pipeline is built, or how it's built better and how it's going to operate. Full transparency, but we need your help to get the word out there to your residents who are looking for employment, especially those that are unemployed, so that we can get them to work.
And Madam Chair, I will defer to the next question. I think Councilman Starr had a point. I will offer him a point if he wants one.
Councilman Starr.
Thank you, Chair and Council President. My point I would ask is, today I had hosted with Ohio Means Jobs, Apprentice in Demand Job Week, opportunities for apprenticeship job opportunities. And when I heard about most of the apprentice programs, you get into these programs and for like the next 3 years is some type of trade opportunity you learn. Now, my question to our Workforce Education and Youth Development Committee, how do we tie in this program into our school system? Because one of the things that we learned is we are graduating 85 or 80% of these students and they don't have no skills. So what I'm looking at from an East Tech, obviously the high school in my neighborhood, how do we set up five of these program opportunities for kids as early as the 9th or the 10th grade, rather, get a chance to be able to declare a trade initiative, so therefore they already graduate with that skill, rather they have quote unquote the education or the curriculum that they need to graduate or not, but once they graduate they do have a skill set, so therefore we're not having this gap. I'm graduating with a skill and I'm putting them into an actual career opportunity, and that's something we have to do in our city because we give these kids too much freedom of telling them they can do whatever they want to be, and when you do that sometimes it takes some people longer to figure out what all they want to do. So how do we tie this type of program so it can be a direct pipeline through our school system so these kids are graduating with an actual apprentice skill to be able to get straight into that career?
Through the chair, Councilman Starr, yesterday morning I spent the morning at John F. Kennedy High School with Principal Menifee and Bruce Walker, who teaches the technical or vocational training there. He's also the head football coach. And we're developing a plan to house an East Side technical school for construction, just like we have at Max Hayes on the West Side at JFK. And that's going to be for open enrollment. Anybody can go there. But that is one plan to expand the program to get it. We also spoke to many students yesterday that were seniors in high school, getting out in a couple of weeks. I urged them and encouraged them that now is the time, not at the end of summer, not when the weather is going to start to get bad in November, December, but now is the time to get involved with Cleveland Bills, and we can probably have you working by July 4th. Because if you take the summer off, too many bad things happen if you're unemployed in the summertime. So we really stress to these young people, boys and girls, young men, young women, that now's the time. You're 18 years old, you can get to work. We want you now. So that may not be exactly what you want to hear, but I hope it's a step in the right direction.
All right, I'll have President Maccabee and then Director Rose.
Thank you, Councilwoman, through the chair, through President, to Councilman. There are a few things here. I think that CEO Gordon hit the nail on the head. He was here earlier when he said the greatest pipeline development that we have is in K-12 education. And this is the very reason why the Urban League changed its direction in terms of only having adult workforce and really integrating the career pathways model at the high schools so that then it feeds into the adult workforce piece and we have a total pipeline development. The other thing I would say, having been an education and youth director for 20 years myself, worked in all of CMSD schools and suburban schools, what I know is that in many of our schools, young people are not going to leave their school and go someplace else for career tech, no matter where it is, because of safety issues, because of the responsibilities that they have to family, to be able to get home close and so forth. So this is why in career pathways and the GCCC model with the PACE curriculum that CEO Gordon talked about, we believe that we need to take the services into every school and actually introduce students so that every student has access to the opportunity and can make a decision. And then finally, the whole idea is we know that for many of the construction jobs and many of the other IT and others, individuals can't go to work until they're 18, but we can start preparing them in 10th, 11th grade, and we developed this year a pilot called Senior Bridge, where we give them a boot camp over the last part of the senior year in January through March. And it's connected to the ACE mentoring, it's connected to working with Cleveland Bills and CEA. And we had 12 individuals at Gann Academy who all graduated, who have been interviewed, and we're looking for the outcomes of those individuals that would either be connected to jobs or into apprenticeships at that point. So I think we have to marry all that we know from the building trades perspective, from working in K-12 education, and we have to marry all of those strategies so that we can reach the greatest number of students in a way that creates success.
I think Ms. Rose.
I got Director Rose.
To the chair, to the councilman, what you're suggesting is very much happening both through the built environment investment and through the system generally. Many of us work through the Greater Cleveland Career Consortium, which implements the PACE programming in CMSD and will expand also to other suburbs to feed the workforce needs throughout the county. One thing that was interesting about setting up these execution partner agreements through the built environment funding was that every partner wants to work with youth. And CEO Gordon was right. That is where the opportunity exists. And we were glad to fund those proposals. Like Ms. Maccabee suggested, that this work is happening in the schools, and it should be. Council President, I just wanted to reiterate that in my remarks, I gave this council a lot of credit for the $10 million you entrusted to my organization that will flow to many of the partners in this room to be proactive about how we prepare a workforce to meet the needs of the developers and leaders in the room.
Awesome, awesome.
President,
Madam-
to the chair, we have Jill.
Okay.
Thank you, through the chair, to the committee. I just wanted to mention one other challenge, and it's particularly for construction careers, how important having your own transportation is. And so it's not just an issue of whether public transportation can get you where you need to go at the times you need to be there, but the issue of how many people have lost the opportunity, have had their driver's license suspended for non-driving related issues. So that is probably a topic for another conversation, but I'd like to put it on the table to look at ways in which we can look at debt-related driver's license suspensions, because that will eliminate a large number of people from accessing these wonderful opportunities. So.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, one last question. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that that's very critical because those collateral sanctions often run into a huge problem. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. I just want to make the statement that I'm concerned because with Intel, and then it's my understanding that Google has just opened up a business down in Columbus, and all of the demands on construction workers and workforce that some of those companies will have, that I'm just hoping that we make sure that we're looking at that backfill. Because, your guys travel. All of the skilled apprentice and union guys travel, and I just want to make sure that we don't run into an unintended consequence by passing this and then don't have the workforce to really match with the need that we're telling everybody that they want to do.
Dave.
Through the
And that's
chair,
all I have, Madam Chair.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I'd be more concerned if we didn't have any work up here, but we have a lot of work up here, so I don't anticipate too many people going south.
Okay.
Thank you.
If I may, through the chair, thank you. Also, the Columbus is a less strong union market to begin with, and their wages are, by virtue of that, lower than they are in Cleveland already by a good bit. So to get Clevelanders to travel to Columbus, it would have to be a pretty large premium on Columbus wages to match or to exceed Cleveland wages. Also, it takes a certain personality to want to travel and work 6 days a week in Columbus when you have a family here. So there are a portion of construction workers nationwide that will travel. That's what they do for their livelihood, but the majority of our construction workers are based in their communities here.
All right, thank you. Next, Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and to the body, to the group that's here. I really appreciate the comments that was made by Mr. Mark Cunningham of Gilbane, talking about membership, mentorship programs. I think that's really important. You know, we've had quite a bit of discussion at the table about how we look at ways and means to get Cleveland school children involved in the process, and having that as a stable of operation is important. And years past, getting into or trying to get a construction job or getting into a union was quite difficult for minorities, and had serious challenges. And we lost a lot of population because it just couldn't find jobs getting into those programs. So it's good to see that there's enough jobs there that are available on the market space. The question would be, how do we look at ways and means to have a trade school on the east side of the city of Cleveland? Because that has been the discussion for quite some time. And in years past, Madam Chairwoman, our neighborhood has asked for John F. Kennedy to be a school where we could have that program put into play, and it wasn't a priority for the administration at the time to move in the direction of looking for putting a trade school, because it seemed like everything was focused then on the west side and what was being put over there. And so the question is, how can we put a trade school on the east side of the city of Cleveland, Mr. Chairman?
Through the chair.
He just
You know what they say, Councilman Jones, when you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Well, fortunately, when you were away, I just explained, I was at John F. Kennedy yesterday with Principal Menifee and Bruce Walker.
Good.
And got word back to the mayor, and he's supporting a trade school at John F. Kennedy High School. I toured the entire campus, and we are talking about design now. We do supply the curriculum for free through the National Building Trades, so we are well on our way to getting that done.
Well, you're the right man for the job, so thank you. Go
Tim.
ahead, distinguished gentleman.
Through the chair, thank you. Also, to supplement on Dave's response, it's important to have the industry involved in those efforts. And just recently, one of our Cleveland Builds trainers, Alfred Fenderson, became the coordinator of the construction program at Max Hayes. And that's great because he's, through Cleveland Builds, connected to the industry, to our employers at CEA and sister associations who put people to work, and to all the apprenticeships within the building trades. All the trades now have access to those students and their parents have access to all the trades. If that's necessary for an East Side school, that may come to pass too, because if a school is good at educating, but the school is not the industry. And it's important that all efforts like that have connection to the industry. So we'll be there to support that should it occur, and I'm hopeful for that.
Well, I just want to, Madam Chairwoman, thank the distinguished gentleman for your comments. You know, this is a dream for us in our neighborhood to have our school be looked at in such a way, as well as give an opportunity to young folks who may not be going to college, but certainly can take up a trade and make a lot of money. There's a lot of money in the industry, and then just not only just being a laborer, but then also looking at maybe putting together mentorship programs to start and establish their own business and contracting companies. I think all of that would help us grow organically from our base, the future generations that are going to be responsible for doing this work.
Just one more. I also wanted to mention that we're also working with Joe Record and Cleveland Muni Football to try to attract young people as well. That's why we got kind of the JFK, and Dominic Ozane's involved also. So we really have a group of people that are well intentioned. We had Keith Lassinger there yesterday from Cleveland Bills. We got to speak to some of the students there. But definitely I'm going to need your help moving forward to make sure that you're out there telling people that, you know, these programs are there and making sure that they know they have access to them.
Well, I would love, Madam Chairwoman, to Dave Wondolowski, get everybody together and do a kumbaya kind of scenario and talk about what the possibilities could be, and then try to link other nonprofit agencies as well as foundations into this to make this a successful program. And I look forward to doing that.
But for the record, through the chair, I do agree with Ms. Maccabee. We do need it in every school. This is the beginning, hopefully, but eventually, hopefully with the new CEO and the mayor's efforts, we can start to integrate this in all schools throughout the district.
Thank you so much. And so I'm going to...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to invite Mr. David Maines to come up because I know you had a couple of comments. And as we are wrapping up, Mr. Councilman Jones.
And thank you for the group, the body that's here. I'm sorry I missed that piece. I had to step out real quick to take care of business in the neighborhood. But really appreciate the work that all of you do in our communities and making sure that our citizens have an opportunity to have a chance at, a fair shake at being able to be employed and take care of their families. Thank you.
Mr. Maines?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Yep, you got 2 minutes.
2
minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I used to work with Community Development Corporation in the Collinwood area. Had the opportunity to speak with a lot of the contractors. And when we worked on projects in that area, we built, assisted in building the Collinwood football center that's there now, and Job Corps. One of the biggest issues that I thought that I ran into in discussing with the contractors is that most of them became tradespeople because they couldn't become developers. I think that this is a beautiful start. I think if you address the bonding issue in this some kind of way, you will help some of these trade individuals become developers. And I think that would help to expand. A lot of them don't get the opportunity to become a developer because they are not able to address the bonding issue. And I think if you're able to address that and assist them in that, you can expand this opportunity. Because we've been talking about different trades, but I think in order for them to grow as a business, they need to become developers. All of them have the ability and all of them are talented. Most of these individuals could build any structure out here, but they don't get the opportunity because they can't meet the bonding requirements. Another thing I would suggest is that I look at what we're talking about today as a short-term community benefit ordinance. There are a lot of other opportunities. I know of a gentleman, for example, in the financing arena, who took some kids out of the neighborhood, trained them how to finance, how to do investments. There's a global contest, and they won the contest right out of here in Cleveland. People from New York came in and gave them the trophies. But you got $1 billion budget here, no minority participation on financing, of no minority participation in the area of assisting in utilizing your funds. So beside the trades, there are other areas and other businesses that I think you can expand upon this, that you can require minority participation, because your OEO department is more than just construction. And I think that if you allow some of these other pieces to be included in this, then I think you would really expand this community benefit ordinance in a lot of different ways. Also, there are creative ways of, you have individuals like Lonnie Coleman, for example. He could assist you tremendously in talking to you about how to address bonding and the problems that the contractors have run into. So I think if you're able to speak to some of them personally, they can kind of give you some ideas on what would be a help in trying to build upon this ordinance. And so that's one of the points I want to make, the bonding issue and creating developers.
Right.
Okay.
Well, thank you again. Thank you so much for your comments. Again, we want to thank all of the panelists. We want to thank the administration, of course, our council members, and our policy team. Let's give them a round of applause for all of the work that they have.
And the law department, and the legal team.
Yes. Just for the work that has been put in to get us to this moment. Again, want to thank, I would say, the original 9 signer owners that we created our CBO, I guess it's about 10 years ago, right? 10 years ago. So we know that we are in just a new time here in Cleveland and have an opportunity to truly strengthen the work that we do to ensure that investments are equitably distributed in our community, and those investments really have they will grow fruits. So like a lot of the just the despair that we see in our communities can be eliminated and significantly reduced. So I don't know if Chair, you have any other things to add? Okay.
Thank you. Just also, we've had a great relationship with a gentleman named Chris Nance over this past almost year, who has been very much engaged with us from helping to organize our sessions at Tri-C, and has really been a partner in bringing some of his expertise to this conversation. So we thank Chris Nance and his efforts as well. Just in order of process, so if anyone here who has presented and shared remarks, or council members as well, if you have any thoughts about amendments or considerations that this body should consider, please get those over to Jennifer O'Leary and Jessica Columbi, so that way they can keep track of those proposed amendments and changes, additions, subtractions for the CBO. And we will take those under advisement as we deliberate how we intend to move on this piece. All right. As the president indicated, that this either will be heard, and the amendments will be addressed either on the 15th or the 22nd. We have not said that yet, so keep a lookout on when that will occur. But again, if you have anything that you would like to share in addition to what you've shared today, please get that to Jessica Columbi and Jennifer O'Leary, council's attorney. All right. Is there any further questions or any comments from the committee? The administration, Tyson, Director Mitchell.
Quick one. Just going back to the Max Hayes program and the new JFK program we want to create. I had the opportunity to review the agreement between the school and the construction school and Max Hayes and the student, and so I just asked, in the new program we're working on, can you include OEO in that, because the agreement is very one-sided, and it was a little disappointing, I would just say. So I just want to make sure if we can include OEO in.
What agreement was it?
This was the agreement between Max Hayes and the construction industry as to placing the student.
We'll figure it out.
And, the ways you can get suspended from the program. I don't want to talk about it right here, but just want to make sure you ask that we be included in looking at the new agreement on the new schools. That's all.
Thank you, Director. Appreciate that. We'll make sure that you all have the conversation to address those. Thank you. Any further questions from the administration at all? I see Chief Epstein here. You want to provide anything? You're good to go? All right. Okay. All right. Well, listen, thank you all again for being here and sharing your remarks. We look forward to our continued collaboration on this issue, a bigger issue all across the city that many of us have been working and dealing with for so many years. But now is the time to codify these and not have it be voluntary, but something that we can all be held accountable to. All right. Thank you. And yes.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. President. All right, and so with that being said, ordinance number 297-2023 as amended stands approved. All right. Thank you all.